The Provian Roadmap, Introduction to Self-Mastery. This course is designed to help you discover your true potential. Let's start by talking about vulnerability. Many people think of vulnerability as weakness, but in reality, it's the key to growth, creativity, and building deep connections. American author Brené Brown, a leading researcher on vulnerability, says, "Vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change." Now think about that. It's about being open, authentic, and willing to take risks, even when the outcome is uncertain. You might put yourself out there and get disappointed, rejected, ridiculed. Like I said, it is what it is. You have to step out there and be willing to go through this pain. Other definitions of vulnerability are as follows. Vulnerability is the courage to be imperfect. Another definition, vulnerability is the key to unlocking our deepest potential. So right now, with this content I make, with this self-advocacy platform I'm building, I am unlocking my deepest potential by being vulnerable on my podcast, like the Stories I Never Told podcast. I'm doing everything I can to access depths of my soul. My deepest potential will be unlocked the more I tap into these vulnerable, uncomfortable, touchy subjects that make me even emotional to remember. Okay? Now, vulnerability is the act of exposing oneself to potential harm or loss. Refusing to expose myself to potential harm or loss meant withdrawing into a shell, into a cocoon, and sulking and feeling bad. Oh my God, the world doesn't love me. Why don't they love me? They don't even know me. Why do they judge me? Whoa. You understand me? Another definition. Vulnerability is the soft underbelly exposed, the tender seed of growth, and the fragile spark of change. You have to expose yourself to grow. Picture, I think Gabomate gave this example. A tree will not grow well when the roots are not able to penetrate the soil. Let's say the soil is ridden with rocks and maybe there are stone walls. That tree will not reach its potential. The soft underbelly, the root, has to be exposed. It has to penetrate. It has to be weak enough, soft enough, weak enough to penetrate in search of nutrients. When you stonewall yourself, when you block yourself in and don't let the light come in, you would have a lot of darkness fester within you. Okay? You need that fragile spark of change, aka vulnerability, to change your trajectory, your worldview, your perception of reality. And that's what vulnerability offers, okay? So in conclusion, vulnerability is not weakness. It's the birthplace of strength. Your strength only begins when you realize and acknowledge that without God, you are nothing. God is deep within you. Your ego is on the outside, thinking it calls the shot. And God is waiting for a chance to show you how fast He can turn up for you, how well He can fight your battles, okay? For example, remember David? When David was covered up with all those armors and all that, he felt weighed down by all the protective covering. He had to let go of all of that and trusted in being as vulnerable as possible. And guess what? Goliath thought, this would be an easy kill. Look at him. How dare him come to me like this without even guarding up? When you approach people without guarding up and you're an open book and they see through you, they'll think you're being stupid. They'll think you don't have sense. But they don't understand that reality mirrors our intentions. Reality mirrors who we are on the inside. If on the inside we're pure, vulnerable, and clean, when we come forward with clean intentions, my oh my, reality opens up to us, including the person that is thinking they have an advantage on us by being deceptive. They wouldn't know when they would have to bow to the power of cause and effect. When you lead with vulnerability and authenticity, people don't have a choice but to be vulnerable and authentic with you too. Yes, it might take some time, but you are in charge of scripting who they get to be to you. They might be flaky and fake to every other human they encounter, but because you are real, they are bound to be real to you. I don't know how much I could go on this topic, but it's the truth. Let's take a look at this educational reference.
So this is knowledge you can't unsee once you see it, but I'm really glad you shared it because obviously it's relevant. 11,000 people. The common response is this. If you'll let me, I'll break this down for you. But first, the seed. Last night I made a pretty vulnerable video talking about some pretty awful things that happened to me, but subsequently led to a personal transformation that I wouldn't change for the world. But I woke up this morning to a message of somebody saying their little brother's going through the same thing, but they're worried it's turning him to hatred. And they basically just want to know how you go through hurt and come out healed. But rather than my story, I'm going to break down to you what is possibly the single greatest representation of a dark night of the soul ever illustrated in media. I'm not exaggerating. Think about yourself and your circumstances as we go through this. This show was not just made for entertainment. This will center around a character named Zuko from what is supposed to be a children's show called Avatar: The Last Airbender. This dude is not even the main character. The story starts off and Zuko is the prince of a kingdom called the Fire Nation. And as the prince, there's a lot of pressure on him to perform, which is not helped by the fact that he has a younger sister who is a prodigy at pretty much everything Zuko is not, which obviously impresses their dad, and by comparison makes Zuko look incompetent, which only fuels his insecurity from a young age. Remember to keep yourself in mind. So Zuko has a really burning desire to prove himself, and he gets an opportunity when his uncle, who's a war general, pulls some strings and gets him access to a war meeting. So he sees this as his chance. The meeting's going and a general proposes a plan that uses members of their military as sacrificial pawns. And even as a kid, Zuko can see that this is wrong. And so he speaks out against the plan in front of everybody. And everyone just looks at him like, oh, you shouldn't have done that, since it was considered disrespectful to do so. An Agni Kai is scheduled, which is just basically a duel using their fire powers. And Zuko's cool with it. He's like, yeah, I'll fight that general. Run them hands, boy. But here's where the Dark Knight starts. He didn't realize who he had disrespected. It was that dude's war plan, but it was the Fire Lord's war room that you spoke out in. And so as a result, who he'd actually disrespected was his dad, the Fire Lord, the man he most wants to impress, where all of his self-worth is tied up. And this is so important, listen, because it always starts like this. There's an event. Something happens. This is the waking up. He refuses to fight his dad, for obvious reasons. His dad says a line that sends a chill down my spine every time I hear it, because I cannot think of a better intro into a Dark Night of the Soul.
You will learn respect, and suffering will be your teacher. I looked away.
And so that's dramatized, but think back to your own life. Some event, some scar, gigantic emotion that your body then takes a snapshot of, that it will from then until healing, reverberating your soul like a heartbeat. Now here's what you do. Zuko is then given a measly crew and banished to search for the Avatar, which is basically a spiritual messiah of this world that has vanished for 100 years, long thought to not exist anymore. So basically he's just sent off on a fool's errand and is told he cannot come home until he essentially finds what is this world's second coming of Jesus. Well, to literally everyone's surprise, he actually finds him somehow. But that's beside the point. That leads into our next symptom of a dark night of the soul and how to manage it. Repeated, seemingly negative interactions with people who should otherwise be neutral. Zuko would always butt heads with his crew because they just thought he was an asshole. But because of his internal suffering, he doesn't know any other way to be. But after his uncle explains to them the past, they give him more grace. But we don't always get that. But Zuko's saving grace in this entire thing is this man right here. His uncle, who decided to come along with him because he loves him, who importantly has experienced great tragedy himself, and through that had his own period of redemption, founded in profound suffering. But in the beginning, Zuko, who needs this advice more than anybody, almost never takes it. It always makes him angry. This is the part that no one ever wants to talk about, which is that when wisdom you need is put before you, if you really need it, you will almost never recognize it. It will probably piss you off. But really think about it. If it fit within your current worldview, is it really something that can be helpful to you? If If you seek a great transformation in your life, great change, can that happen with your current life intact? And this next part has the greatest impact on your dark night. Zuko's being taught lightning bending, and he can't seem to figure it out. And again, this brings him great anguish, because it feels like there's nothing he can do right, like the whole world's shattering. Does that sound familiar to you at all? But Iroh tells him the key, which if you understand it, and person who sent me that message, if your brother can understand it, in my opinion, this is what makes the difference between this becoming what ends you or what makes you. After Zuko fails again in a huge way, he freaks out and his uncle drops one of the most profound quotes in cartoon history. He says, hey, you need to get rid of your feelings of shame if you want your anger to go away. Zuko straight up tells him, I don't have any shame. I'm as proud as ever. He says pride is not the opposite of shame, but its source. True humility is the only antidote to shame. That was a turning point for him, because from that point on, that would become the foundation of his redemption, as it was for me. Because that profound shame and pain is often based in a perceived loss, which subsequently causes you to take a bunch of action, expend a bunch of energy, trying to get back to a lifeline you think you should have been on. But the more you do that, the more the universe will blow up in your face, over and over again. Not because it wants to, but because that's a reflection of you inside. It's only when you end the battle, accepting things as they are, attempt to live more in flow and harmony, despite what may have happened in the past, then you can step into the future. But until you learn humility, you will keep bumping up against anger and shame. This is not to destroy you or convict you, it is guiding you. But whether or not it becomes a transformation, how many explosions it's going to take, whether you give the wisdom that may hurt as it comes in, the opportunity to reach you, all of those factors are up to the person. But it always starts with humility and acceptance. This got way too long, but I really need to do a part 2, because there's way more to his arc than that. So follow for that. See you soon.